Hi, I'm Eric Siegel with ericstrains.com, and today we're going to take a look at the new 3-rail O-scale 282 Heavy Mikado from Lionel. Okay, so let's start things off with a little bit of history. The Heavy Mikado is a 282 type steam locomotive. That means it has 2 wheels up front, 8 drive wheels, and 2 wheels on the trailing truck. The Heavy Mikado was a standard class of steam locomotive that was designed under the auspices of the USRA during World War I. Now, for you kids out there, USRA stands for United States Railroad Administration, and basically what happened was that when World War I rolled around, the country and the government realized that the railroad system here was not optimized or organized enough to allow for the effective transport of troops and materials necessary to win the war. And so the government came in and took everything over with the USRA. And part of that takeover was that the railroads were only allowed to build certain types of engines. And basically there was a list, and if you wanted to build a new engine, you could only build an engine that was on that list. If you wanted to build something else, the government said, tough, we're at war, you can only build these designs, and the Heavy Mikado was one of the approved designs. Now, of course, all of this happened in a time when people and businesses knew that sacrifices had to be made to win a war, and the government was not shy about implementing policies necessary to win the war. So it wasn't like it is today, which is actually a little bit unfortunate. But hey, there's no time for politics, so let's keep going. The name Mikado originated from a group of Japanese 282 locomotives that were built by Baldwin for the Nippon Railway of Japan in 1897. The design caught on and they became very popular in this country, and they were always known as Mikados because of their Japanese origin. Except during World War II. After Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, they became known as MacArthur's because I guess the railroads didn't want to go around saying, hey, check out our Mikados. But after World War II ended, they went back to being called Mikados, and they have been ever since. So why were these called Heavy Mikados? Well, it's because there were also engines called Light Mikados, which were essentially the same, but the Heavy Mikados had a higher axle load, larger cylinders, more steam generating ability, and therefore more power than a Light Mikado. But whether it was a Light Mikado or a Heavy Mikado, they were very popular. For the Heavy Mikados, 233 of these were built during the war, and then after the war it became a very common design, and in the end there were almost 1,000 of the Heavy Mikados built, and that doesn't include the Light Mikados. If you include the Light Mikados, there were well over 2,000 built. It was a very popular design, and Mikados remained in service until the end of the steam era. So what road names does this engine come in? Well, get ready because it's a long list. In 2014, Lionel offered the pilot version that you see here, an L&N version, a Pittsburgh and West Virginia version, a Central of New Jersey, a Frisco, a Chicago and Illinois Midland, a New York Central, and a Great Northern rendition. In 2015, they've offered a Missouri Pacific, a Southern, a CB&Q, a Milwaukee Road, an Erie version, a Western Pacific, a Wheeling and Lake Erie, a black unlettered version, and a nickel plate road rendition. So chances are there is one that will appeal to you. Now, as for me, I've ordered 2 of these. I ordered the pilot version that you see here, and I've also ordered the black unlettered version. So it's painted black, but it doesn't have a road name on it. So what I'm going to do when I get that is put my own road name on it, the AWRX, the name of my layout, and then I'm going to weather it. So it should be pretty cool. I'm really excited about it, especially because Lionel does not normally offer black unlettered versions of their engines. Now, keep in mind that no matter which version of the Heavy Mikado you buy, they're all the same on the inside, so everything you see here today applies to any of the Heavy Mikados regardless of road name. So now let's go over some stats and facts on this model. The overall length is right at 21.5 inches. The combined weight of the engine and the tender is 8 pounds 6 ounces. The pulling power of this engine is 2 pounds 10 ounces, which is pretty good. And the minimum curve needed to operate this engine is 0.54. So if you've got a small layout with tight turns, this may be an engine for you. On the inside, the engine is powered by one large flywheel motor. There's a fan-driven smoke unit up front for the smokestack, and then there's a second smoke unit for the whistle steam smoke effect. And then back in the tender, we've got the electronics for the legacy control system as well as legacy rail sounds. As usual, there are 3 ways to operate this engine. The preferred method is to use Lionel's legacy command system, as that will give you access to all of the engine's advanced features. However, you can also run the engine with Lionel's classic TMCC command system, or you can run the engine conventionally with just a transformer and some track. So that takes care of the stats. Now let's go in for a closer look at some of the great features and details on this model. Let's check out the pilot area. You can see it looks great with lots of nice detailing all around. There's safety tread up on the deck here and on these steps. We've got a separately applied coupler cut bar here, and then there's a chain that goes down into a dummy scale coupler. And then of course, if you want to double head the engine, you can swap out that scale coupler for a dummy O-gauge coupler that's also packaged with the engine. Moving back, here's a look at one of the 2 sets of cylinders. And then behind the cylinders, you can see the 4 sets of drive wheels and all of the associated gear. It looks great when the engine is in motion. And you can also see some of the separately applied detailing up here. And then here's a look at the area around the firebox. We've got lots of nice rivet detail on the firebox itself. And then we've got all this nice separately applied piping and so forth, and a very detailed trailing truck as well. Here's a quick look at the other side of the engine, and as you can see, it looks very similar to the side you've already seen. Moving up on the engine, right above the pilot, we've got the boiler front. There's a separately applied grab iron looping around the bottom. There's an operating headlight here in the middle and lighted number boards on either side. Now on the pilot version here, there are no numbers on the number boards, but if you buy one of the versions of the Heavy Mikado that has a paint job and a road name, it will have numbers on the number boards. Above that, we've got a set of operating marker lights. There's a little swinging metal bell up here, and then last of all, the front of the boiler opens up like that. As we start down the side of the engine, you can see one of the 2 separately applied handrails that run the entire length of the boiler. And then right here, we've got 2 legible builder's plates, and there are 2 on the other side as well. This is probably a good time to mention that whenever you buy one of these pilot locomotives like I've got here, some of the finishing touch details like the builder's plates and the number boards and the coal load back in the tender are packaged separately with the engine when you take it out of the box. And the reason Lionel does that is so that if you choose to paint the engine, you can do so and then apply these finishing touches once the paint has dried. Of course, I'm not going to paint my pilot engine, so I went ahead and put them on. So with the builder's plates, all I did was put a dot of super glue in the spot where the plates go and then just stuck them on. As we continue to move down the side, you can see some of the cast-in detailing coming off of the sand dome and the start of some more separately applied detailing here. And back toward the cab, we've got the handrail terminating, and then we've got this piece coming down here. Looks nice. Here's a look at the side of the cab. There are 2 clear plastic inserts in these windows here and on the 2 windows that are on the other side as well. And there are also clear plastic inserts in the side windows. Right here, if this were a painted version, there would be a road number or road name or both. And then on the inside, you can see one of the 2 hand-painted crew figures. Now let's check out the top of the boiler. Right here we've got a nice separately applied detail piece, and then we've got some cast-in details around it. Then we've got the smokestack, and it does contain a fan-driven smoke unit. And of course, to load smoke fluid into the smoke unit, you simply pour the smoke fluid directly down the stack. And then behind the smokestack, we've got a nicely detailed sand dome. Moving back, we've got the steam dome right here, and then over to the side is a separately applied whistle piece, and then back here we've got a separately applied pop-off valve piece. Now this engine does have the whistle steam smoke effect, so when you blow the whistle, smoke will shoot out of a hole that is right under the whistle piece, and it gives the illusion of steam shooting out of the whistle, and it looks really cool. You'll see it in action later in this video. Now, the smoke unit for the smokestack up front and the smoke unit in charge of the whistle steam smoke effect share a smoke fluid reservoir. So when you pour smoke fluid down the smokestack, it supplies smoke fluid for the smokestack up front as well as the whistle steam smoke effect. Toward the back, we've got some nice separately applied detailing here, and then on top of the cab there are two roof vents that open up like that. Here's a look at the back side of the engine. Starting at the bottom, we've got the drawbar, and then sitting up on top of that is the infrared sensor that allows the electronics in the engine to communicate with the electronics in the tender. Up here, we've got a couple of separately applied metal grab irons. These back windows each have clear plastic inserts in them. You can get a good look at the interior of the cab, and it looks pretty good. The back head is nicely detailed, and it would look even better on one of the painted versions because there would be some hand-painted valves and gauges. There's a red glow in the firebox when the engine is in operation, and the interior of the cab is illuminated, and that light does turn off when the engine starts moving. Here's a look at the underside of the engine. There are 3 pickup rollers and then 2 traction tires on the last set of drivers. And finally, there are 3 switches under the cab. One is the smoke unit on-off switch. One is the Odyssey speed control on-off switch. And then finally, there's the run program switch. Alright, so that takes care of the engine. Now let's take a look at the tender. Starting down here, we've got some nicely detailed truck side frames. Up here, some nice rivet detail on both sides. There's a nice cast-in step here and one on the other side. And then we've got separately applied metal grab irons on all 4 corners of the tender. There's not a whole lot to see on the front of the tender. Most of the detailing is cast in. However, down here on the drawbar, we have the second infrared sensor that allows for that communication between the electronics in the engine and the electronics here in the tender. Now let's check out the back of the tender. There are 2 add-on steps down here. We've got a separately applied metal coupler cut bar and a metal ladder right here. There are 2 operating marker lights. There's an operating reverse light, and there are also lighted number boards on either side of that reverse light. And again, on a painted version with a road name, there would be road numbers on those number boards, but on this pilot version, they're blank. And then finally, down here, we've got the electrocoupler that can be thrown from the Legacy or TMCC remotes. Here's a look at the top of the tender. The coal up here is real coal, and by that I mean it's little bits of real coal. Now, as I said earlier, if you buy the pilot version of this engine, the coal load will not be on the tender when you take it out of the box. Instead, the coal will be packed separately in a little Ziploc baggie, and it's up to you to put the coal on the tender. And again, I think they did that so that in case you decide to paint the tender, you don't have to worry about accidentally painting the coal. You can paint the tender, let it dry, and then put the coal on later. So what I did to apply the coal is basically the same procedure as when I ballast my track. I made a nice little mound of coal, I sprayed it with some isopropyl alcohol, and then I hit it with a diluted white glue mixture, 50% white glue, 50% water, let it dry, and it's good to go. Behind the coal load, there's this little hatch, and if you open that hatch up, it reveals the master volume control for the engine. And here's a look at the underside of the tender. There are 2 pickup rollers, 1 per truck. There's a speaker for the sound system right here. A little bit of add-on detailing there. And then right in the middle is the IR sensor for the Lionel LCS sensor track. Okay, the last thing we're going to do before we start this thing up is BFIMO, best feature in my opinion. Well, my pick for best feature this time around may seem a bit odd, but I actually like the fact that this engine has a small sound to it. And let me explain what that's about. I have a lot of really big steam engines in my collection. I've got a couple AC-12s, a Big Boy, a Challenger, an S1, a Yellowstone, and so forth. And those are really big steam engines that have big thundering sound. And the Heavy Mikado, being one of the smaller engines in my collection, has a relatively small sound. So when you run this thing next to the Big Boy, it really can't hold a candle because the Big Boy is so big in size and in sound. So I really like that about this. So my pick for best feature is the proportional sound. Smaller engine, smaller sound. I like that. All right, let's go ahead and start her up.
This is the dispatcher. Do you copy?
Roger that, dispatcher. I read you. Over.
Okay, start her up. Stand by for track orders.
Thanks, dispatcher. We're ready to move.
Okay, first up, let's check out the whistle. And since this engine does have the whistle steam smoke effect, you'll see that smoke shooting out of the whistle right over here. Okay, now let's check out the bell. One of the nice features of legacy-equipped steam engines that I don't mention very often is the fact that if you want to, you can just do a single hit to the bell rather than the continuous bell sound. So on the legacy remote, normally for the continuous bell sound, you would just go up and hold it, like that, and then to turn it off, up and hold again. Or you can just do a single bell hit like this. So if you want, you can do that single hit or a series of single hits. Which is pretty cool. It kind of puts you in the cab. Now let's check out the cylinder steam release sound. And here's the sound of water being loaded into the tender.
Full. Over.
Roger that. Out.
Okay, now let's check out the Crew Talk sounds, and as always, if you don't like the Crew Talk sounds, you don't have to use them. Now, an interesting note about the Crew Talk sounds on this engine is that, as is the case with a lot of the engines Lionel is putting out right now, the voice from the cab is that of Rich Melvin. Rich went into Lionel to do the voice recordings for the Nickel Plate Road 765 that they put out a while back, and I guess he must have made a lot of recordings, or Lionel is recycling a lot of those recordings, because you will find his voice in a lot of the engines that Lionel is putting out right now, both steam and diesel. So let's give it a listen.
Dispatcher here. Please hold. Over.
Roger that. Standing by for a clearance. Out.
Dispatcher here. You're clear to pull. Over.
Thank you, sir. I'm taking the signal. Out. Dispatcher, arrived and standing by. Over.
Affirmative. Welcome back. Out.
Dispatcher, are we clear through the diamond? Over.
Yep. Clear ahead. Over.
Thank you, sir.
Dispatcher here. All clear inbound. Over.
Thank you much. Approaching now. Out.
Dispatcher here. Come to a full stop. Over.
Roger that. Full stop. Out.
Okay, we are ready to roll it out. I'm going to activate sequence control on the engine so that many of the sounds are automated as the engine runs. And to do that, I'm going to press and hold the aux 1 key on the legacy remote until I hear the ding ding toot sound that lets me know that sequence control has been activated. Alright, there it is, so let's roll it out.
Tower, we're moving. Over.
Acknowledged. Keep it rolling. Out.
Okay, that about wraps it up for this review. This is a beautiful engine, and I'm really glad that I ordered more than one of these. But like I said, I do like to get the pilot version of steam engines when possible because I think they're just so beautiful on their own, and you can really see all of the detail and work that goes into making one of these models. But on the other hand, I'm really glad that I'm also getting a painted version to work with as well. Now, if you're interested in purchasing one of these, no matter which road name you get, the retail price is just under $1,300, although if you go through a good Lionel dealer, you should be able to get a decent discount off that retail price. And as always, if you're looking for a good Lionel dealer, try my favorite train store, which is Legacy Station. You can find them on the web at www.legacystation.com or give them a call at 770-339-7780. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm Eric Siegel, and I'll see you next time. Well, that's not good.